Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Sitting in for Pinky Webb, I'm Ria Tanjuatco-Trillo. Today on the program, the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections no longer pushing through this year. Comelec Chairman George Garcia tells us what's next after the postponement live. And later, a lawmaker wants a probe on the inefficient, faulty national ID system. Deputy Minority Leader and Bagong Henerasyon Party List Representative Bernadette Herrera joins us in the program. President Bongbong Marcos signs into law a bill postponing the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections from December 2022 to October 2023. The poll body will comply with the law and will reschedule election-related activities. Some groups lament that the postponement will be more costly and would deprive people from choosing new leaders. Let's go straight to the source of the story. Commission on Elections Chairman George Garcia is with us. Sir, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Ma'am Ria, and good morning to all the televiewers.
Sir, maybe you can start off by telling us what were the reasons and justifications behind postponing the elections?
Well, actually, Ma'am Ria, it's a political decision on the part of the Legislative and the Executive Department. As far as the Comelec is concerned, under the Constitution, we're just here to implement whatever is the decision of the Legislative and the Executive. If there is a law, then we will have to implement. So the decision, really, the wisdom of postponing the election belongs to Congress and the Executive. The Comelec cannot do anything about that. We're here only to, as a mandate, to implement the same.
Right. So the elections now have moved to October 2023. So what are your next steps from here, given that this is now a law?
We will have to issue some guidelines, some resolutions, informing the public, especially those who will be prospective candidates, that definitely the schedules that we have set, the activities that we have set in relation to the December 5, 2022 election will not push through. We will have to clarify that definitely there will be no more filing of the certificates of candidacy by October 23 to 29, and certainly there will be no more campaign period, and likewise there will be no more gun ban beginning October 23. And at the same time, we will have to clarify that we will have to push through with all the notice of award, with all the awards that we have given, particularly referring to the procurement of certain election paraphernalia, and likewise, we will have to push through with the printing of the ballots. But we will have to stop for at least 1 week so that we can recalibrate and prepare a new template to reflect the new date of the election, not necessarily anymore December 5, 2022. And at the same time, we will have to make a big announcement that we will proceed with continuing registration beginning the last week of November up to the last week of May next year, so that we'll be able to at least register at least 2 to 5 million voters more for the next year's election.
Alright, so Chairman, nasaang percent na sana kayo ng preparation kung natuloy ang elections, and how much has been spent so far in election preparations?
Well, as far as the amount spent, mga 1 billion na po yung nagagastos pa lamang naman natin, because when we sent the notices of award, when we entered into a contract, obligated pa lang, we are not yet paying anything sa mga suppliers because wala naman po silang delivery pa. But as far as printing of the ballots is concerned, we were supposed to pay 800 million pesos more or less to the National Printing Office, but payment will be later pa rin po. And so more or less mga 1 billion pa lang po yung nagagastos namin doon sa 8.5 billion pesos that we are supposed to spend for the December 5, 2022 election. So mga 80 to 85% na po kaming ready supposedly for the conduct of the election by December 5. Ang kulang na lang po namin, Ma'am Ria, is the training of our electoral board members, the teachers, and likewise the sending of all the election paraphernalia to the different places in the country, to the different treasurers all around the country.
All right, so now you have lots of time to train them. But for the voters part naman po, remind us again, please, when will the registration period be? When will that be open?
Thank you very much, Ma'am Ria. To those who have not yet registered and who are not yet registered, or those whose whose registration was deactivated simply because you failed to vote twice in 2 consecutive elections, or you'll be 15 by election by next year, or you'll be 18 by election by next year. You have to register, and you have to register as a voter so long as you are a resident of the Philippines for at least 1 year and 6 months in the place where you intend to register. Ito pong katapusan ng November of this year. We were going to resume the registration of voters and will end by May of next year. Katapusan din po ng May. But our request is, don't wait for next year, for May, to register. Just try to register earlier. Mas maganda po yun. You will not line up. And at the same time, we are now trying to devise a way by which you can register better. We would like to introduce a register anywhere scheme approach. And therefore, wherever you are, even if you are not a resident of that place, simply because you are there on a temporary basis, you can register in that place even if you are not a resident of that place. But we'll try to have a pilot test first in the NCR and in major cities nationwide.
All right. Yeah, I think voters would appreciate that convenience. Now, earlier, Chairman, you were talking about election paraphernalia. Is there any, or how much paraphernalia is going to go to waste because of this postponement?
Well, as far as election paraphernalia are concerned, nothing will go to waste. Ballot boxes, padlocks, ball pen, indelible inks, they will not dry up. They will not dry up definitely. But ballots that we have printed so far, even if the date as reflected is December 5, 2022, will not be lost likewise. So po kayo mag-alala, walang masasayang. We'll still be using these ballots. We'll just issue an en banc resolution saying that all the ballots printed so far, although reflecting the date of December 5, 2022, will still be and can still be used in the next election. So nothing will go to waste. Kung sakali po nakapag-train kami ng mga teachers, ma'am, and together with the venue and together with the little honoraria to the teachers, yun po medyo that's a wastage. Simply because we cannot require them to return the money that we'll be giving to them or the food that we'll be offering to them, and therefore we'll be offering another training by next year. So technically, as far as election paraphernalia is concerned, wala pong nasayang, Ma'am Ria.
Okay, so walang legal impediment in using the ballots that have been printed so far with the date this year. How many ballots were printed?
More or less 5 million ballots, Ma'am Ria. And today, we already stopped the printing for us to prepare the new template to reflect the new date of the election.
All right. Now, sir, your budget for the barangay and SK polls this year can no longer be used for other purposes. I believe in the past you said that the postponement would actually be more costly. Is this true?
That's true, ma'am. Well, number one, on the first matter that you have discussed, you're right. The budget cannot be realigned to any other purpose. There is a continuing appropriation provision in the law assigned by our president. And at the same time, there was this colatilla which says there that there should be a supplemental budget in the event that the budget that we have right now, which is 8.5 minus the expense that we have so far, there will be a supplemental budget for the balance of whatever is needed for purposes of conducting the election as reset. We have said before, and when we went to Congress, that if we are going to reset the election by May of next year, we'll be spending more or less 17 billion, less the 8.5 billion that we have right now. And if we are going to reset the election by December of next year, we will be needing 18 billion, less the 8.5 billion that we have right now. So more or less, if the election is by October of next year, our estimate is we will be spending 17.5 billion, less the 8.5 billion that we have right now.
All right. Now, for next year, what changes can we expect? How many more voters do you expect to see? And because of that, will you need more poll workers?
Yes, Ma'am Maria, that's the reason why instead of lesser expenses for the resetting, there will be additional expenses for the resetting of the election, simply because based on our projection and estimate, we will be able to register at least 3 to 5 million more voters. Additional voters would mean additional precincts. Additional precincts would mean additional teachers. Additional teachers would mean additional honoraria. And at the same time, additional election paraphernalia, padlocks, ballot boxes, pen, indelible ink, and you name it, we will have increase in the number of election paraphernalia that we will be needing in the event that the election really is postponed. And so that's the reason why, that's the justification for the increase in the budgetary requirement for a reset election.
Will you be requiring extra budget for new machines or maintenance of old machines, Chairman?
Ma'am Ria, the election for of barangay and SK is actually a manual election. We will not be needing the machines. The automated election will be by 2025. So dahil manual po siya, voters are expected to write the names of the candidates in the ballots, and the teachers will have to manually to read the ballots openly, and somebody will have to write at the blackboard, and at the same time write in the election returns in the table. So manual pong election kapag barangay and SK.
Okay, now with the postponement of the barangay and SK elections, would this possibly have a trickle-down effect on succeeding elections? Will it somehow affect the operations of midterm elections?
Well, we had been hoping that the election, if in case the election is really postponed, sana po mga May na lang para medyo may time pa kami to prepare for the 2025 election. But then we were given the option of whether it is May or December, and better na rin po yung October rather than December, because we do not want the election to be too close to the preparation for the 2025 election. But surely, definitely, 2024 is not an option. So kung mga October, ma'am, okay pa din po yun. We will have sufficient time pa rin to prepare for the 2025 election. But of course, when it comes to election management and preparation, better for a longer period of preparation, so that for any eventuality, especially if it is a computerized election, an increased number of voters, medyo mas mahaba po, mas maganda sana yung preparation natin.
All right, you mentioned, sir, that you'll need about 17.5 billion pesos more minus the 8 billion you currently have. Saan po manggagaling itong budget na to? Where will those funds come from?
Then Congress, ma'am, will have to issue the necessary supplemental appropriation as contained in the law assigned by the President. And definitely we'll have to convince them that indeed, because of the increased number of voters and increased number of precincts, and then the teachers, and likewise will be pushing for and fighting for an increase in honoraria of our electoral board members, the teachers, or if not, it should be the Comelec that should be shouldering the 20% withholding taxes that are being imposed upon the honoraria of our teachers. Unfair naman po na manual na yung election, ma'am Ria, and then babawasan nyo pa sila ng taxes. So if we are going to shoulder that, then it should be given to us hopefully by Congress, so that wala na pong babawasin sa 10,000 and 9,000 pesos that the teachers were about to receive or will be receiving on election day.
Chairman, dahil laging nasuspend ang barangay and SK elections, may gusto ba silang i-amend sa law?
Well, perhaps it's high time that we can also think, this is just a personal opinion, of trying to increase na lang or to lengthen the term of office of a barangay or SK. So kung 3 years po siya, total na i-extend din naman, perhaps mapag-isipan na natin na 5 years, and then subject to re-election for one re-election only, so another 5 years, so 10 years po yun, and then instead of 3 years, and then minsan po na-extend. So once na-extend din po yung term of office. You see, under the Constitution, under Article 10, Section 8, of course, we can readily admit that the Constitution does not provide for the date or the term of office of a barangay and SK official. It says merely that it depends on Congress, that a law may be provided as to the term of office of barangay and SK. But perhaps it's now high time that we should fix once and for all the term of office of barangay and SK, so that we can likewise determine for election management purposes and election preparation purposes, we can have magiging maliwanag po yung preparation namin. 3 years ba kung 3 years, 5 years ba kung 5 years, para po hindi rin kami nahihirapan sa kaka-adjust.
Right. Chairman, some groups lament the postponement, saying that this is going to deprive voters of the ability to change their leaders. Is it possible that because of repeated postponements, some SK officials are already overaged? So what happens now also to incumbent officials?
Yeah, truly, ma'am. Under the law assigned there is an extension of the term. So lahat po sila na nakaupo ngayon automatically are extended, and therefore their term of office will be until the next officials are elected by October of 2023. And that's the reason why also we have let our people understand that that's the reason why the Comelec will be pushing through with our preparation, simply because, Ma'am Ria, there is a possibility that somebody, a group, an interest group, a civil society group, a taxpayer may question the legality and constitutionality of this law, and therefore it's up to the Supreme Court whether the Supreme Court will sustain the constitutionality or declare illegal the law. And therefore, if that eventuality will happen, then the Comelec should be prepared, and that's why the Comelec will still push through with everything that we have been doing for the last several weeks and months.
Sir, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it. That was Comelec Chairman George Garcia. Coming up, a lawmaker wants to probe on the inefficient rollout of the national ID system. We'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Ria Tanjuatco-Trillo. Our source today, Deputy Minority Leader and Bagong Henerasyon Party List Representative Bernadette Herrera. Congresswoman, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Ria, and good morning to all the viewers.
Now, Congresswoman, we invited you here to speak about the national ID system. But before we get to that, we wanted to get your reaction on the postponement of the barangay and SK elections. What's your take on that, ma'am?
Well, it was a decision made during the congressional hearing, so we all agreed to postpone it since I think masyado pang mabilis kaagad ang election ulit, and then so now we decided to postpone it until December 2023. Syempre, may opposing views. Some would like to postpone it, some would not want to postpone it. But I agree with Commissioner Chairman George earlier. This time, let's just make it longer and then set it at that so that we do not need to postpone it every time.
All right.
I don't like postponing elections, but because of certain situations and that the schedule it was set previously, then it's better to make sure that we set it at the schedule, that we don't need to postpone it anymore.
Right. Thank you for that. Now, you want a probe, ma'am, on the rollout of the national ID system, and you even called it inefficient, delayed, and faulty. Why is this, and who's accountable for it?
Well, of course, PSA, because PSA is the one in charge on this one, and because the mother agency is NEDA. That's why I'm calling their attention. I actually don't understand why it's under PSA to begin with, but they said because it's data collection. So, but anyway, but it's unacceptable because since 2019, a lot of people have data captured already. But until now, not even, only a small number of cards have been distributed. And unfortunately, with the number of cards distributed, after 3 months, the reports are it was faded already. So that means that's screaming of inefficiency. And I don't understand what's taking them so long. The answer that they gave me was because of the lack of printers. This is a ₱1 billion contract. Saying that there are lack of printers is unacceptable, grossly unacceptable. Printer na lang, nakukulangan pa. So that means walang kwentang supplier ito, dahil how can you say that you did not anticipate the volume? When the data collection takes long, pag bumaba ang PSA in one barangay, they can only get around 100 to 200 national ID data. So you have enough time. And if the service was high-tech, just like in LTO, you can actually give the cards at the same time. You just have to wait for a couple of minutes, then you can release it. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm calling on PSA and I'm calling on Congress to make a congressional hearing, because I don't understand why this is happening. And on top of that, it was reported to me that the PSA IDs are not accepted in banks because there are no signatures. So I think that's really something that we really need to discuss in Congress.
All right, ma'am, talk to us about the impact of the delay on the rollout, on top of all these problems just with the printing and data collection. What does it mean for us if this rollout is severely delayed?
Well, of course, the national ID is delayed, and a lot of Filipinos just gets disenfranchised because a lot do not have IDs. That's why we thought about this, simply because a lot of Filipinos don't have access to IDs. With this one, it's supposed to be a a national ID wherein yan ay lahat except for the driver's license, di ba? Kasi it has a skill set attached to it. Kaya the delay would really disenfranchise a lot of Filipino people with a lot of things that they need with their identification cards.
Now, do you have the data on how much or how many of the cards have been delivered compared to the target?
Well, they said they were able to deliver around 20 million already, but I think the delay is around 70 million. They promised to deliver the EIDs, 20 million EIDs by December, and then by the end of, or by June 2023, they promised to complete 50 million deliveries of IDs. But I don't know, for me, that's really unacceptable considering we've started data collection 3 years ago.
Right, what's going to happen to the people who did receive their cards and the ones that you said after 3 months these were faded? Do they have to go back and reapply? Will they be issued new cards?
According to PSA, they will replace it. But I don't know how soon they can replace such when they can't even deliver the first batch of IDs. But you know, I feel that it's useless to deliver it right now if banks don't accept it. That's something that I was really surprised to hear because when I questioned and it viraled in TikTok, a lot of people messaged me and said that the national ID is not being accepted in banks. So why the hell do we have a national ID if it has incomplete information?
Absolutely.
Because there's no signature.
Right. Ma'am, did the COVID-19 pandemic also hamper the national ID rollout? What kind of effect did that have?
Of course, in terms of data collection, it did because of the restrictions in communities. But I think it's not the data collection that had a problem, but it's mostly the printing. So I don't think the pandemic has anything to do with that. So because that's just basically printing. And I'm calling on the suppliers, dapat yan, when you do data collection, on the spot, give the ID already. Napakadami ng high-tech na software ngayon where you can do that.
Absolutely.
I don't know why they can't.
Right. Ma'am, in the newly signed SIM registration law, some telcos are pushing for the national ID as a requirement, but we also know there are many backlogs. So what are your recommendations for now? Do we change the agency or the leader handling the national ID?
Well, of course, I'm still hopeful that their commitment to deliver the EIDs, because I'm telling them, just deliver the EIDs first. Wala nang problema dapat sa printer yan because you have all the data with you. All you need to do is Viber or, I don't know, email or send these IDs. Kasi kung nasa phone mo na yan, that's how the SIM card registration will work also. You can always show your ID naman using your cell phone. So I don't think there will be a problem to that. So yan ang aking temporary solution. I-adjust nila to put the signature of the ID holder dun sa EID na isa-send nila sa bawat mamamayang Pilipino. If they do that, then the SIM card registration is good to go. Kasi gagamitin yung national ID na nasa phone mo. Hihintayin na lang yung actual. Kailangan na lang mag-adjust tayong lahat na EID muna ang gagamitin in the absence of the physical ID.
Ma'am, in your mind, what is the ideal timetable for the national ID rollout?
Well, for the EIDs, for me, the idea is to give it right away within this year. Because if the data is there, it's just a matter of, sending messages, emails, text, messenger. There are a lot of ways to deliver the national ID. Sobrang kompleto ng data collection ng PSA during the rollout. So I don't see any problem with that. As far as printing is concerned, they have to deliver everything within the next 6 months.
Within the next 6 months.
Their commitment was June 2023. So I hope they can complete it by June 2023.
Okay.
And afterwards, all new data collection, my request to them, or I'm encouraging them to do on-the-spot releasing of ID.
Yeah, so you don't have to go back and line up and go through kind of like the whole process again. Ma'am, do you have the support of your fellow lawmakers on this?
Oh yes, because a lot of constituents are really hampering on this to have their national ID because a lot of people have gotten their data captured, I think a year ago at the minimum. So wala pa akong naririnig na 6 months, 3 months na data capture may ID na sila. So minimum 1 year wala pa rin silang data. So Lahat. During the campaign, here in District 1 of Quezon City, we've data captured a lot. Not a single ID has been delivered. So the lawmakers with me, the minority, solid, but I also the majority. We're also calling on trying to find out why DICT isn't really on top of this. PSA said they were involved, but their involvement should be higher than what's existing right now.
All right, so a lot to look into there. Ma'am, let's go now to the
Yes.
2023 budget. Do you support calls to purge billions worth of confidential and intelligence funds from the proposed 2023 budget? I think it's like 9 billion pesos for that.
Well, as long as because the confidential funds and other agencies meron namang commitment to liquidate and to say where it came from. Meron kasi talagang leeway wherein you need to give confidential funds because there are expenses that needs to protect the country. And those are really confidential. But there are part of those budget where, like for the office of the Vice President and the Department of Education, she promised liquidation every 3 months. So I think that's something that we welcome, and we must give it an opportunity to see how that will be delivered, because this will be social services that will redound to the welfare of the Filipino people.
All right, ma'am. What about the unfunded programs? 1 billion for special risk allowance of healthcare workers. There's a 25 billion for social pension hikes for indigent seniors. 66 million for cash benefits for Filipino centenarians, and then 500 million for aid for cancer patients. And then there's 532 million for special education. What will happen to these programs?
There's NACC pa ha. There's NACC. Let's not forget that, because that is the one that changed the inter-country adoption. Right now, the minority is trying to look over all the lump sum in different agencies so that we can lump them all together and put this in these unfunded programs. I support the funding of these programs, kaya kami po sa minority, iniisa-isa namin lahat ng lump sum na nakita namin para ilagay doon. Because if hindi siya naka-line item, then dapat lang ilipat po natin doon sa mga unfunded, like the cancer program. Importante po yan. So definitely, we'll do something about it to fund these unfunded programs. Hindi po namin i-allow sa minority not to make this happen.
All right, ma'am. Thank you for being with us here on The Source this morning. We appreciate your time. That was Deputy Minority Leader and Bagong Henerasyon Party List Representative Bernadette Herrera. And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Ria Tanjuatco-Trillo. You're watching CNN Philippines.